Welcome to the Beyond Barriers podcast. If you're an ambitious woman who wants to advance in leadership, then this podcast is for you. This podcast is co-hosted by Nikki Barua, digital innovator, serial entrepreneur, author, and speaker, and Monica Marquez, senior corporate leader, ex-Googler, and diversity expert. From inspiring stories to cutting-edge strategies, you'll learn how to develop the skill set, mindset, and tool set to get future-ready fast and accelerate your success. In today's episode, we are going to be discussing how to overcome approval addiction. Now, you might be wondering, what is approval addiction? So, Nikki, tell us a little bit about what does all of this mean?
People pleasing. It's an intense desire to get approval of those around you and avoiding feelings of rejection. So really, worrying about what other people think and how they might feel about your opinion and therefore not expressing it. Not saying no to things that you don't want to do.
Right.
And generally sort of really being driven by an external context as opposed to focusing on what drives you and what is right for you.
Right. That really resonates with me because I can say that I certainly have suffered from this, approval addiction, especially in my younger age. I think as you get older, you probably kind of learn to care less about it. But I know that when I was younger, I really, really struggled with it, especially because I was gay. I am, yeah. But I discovered, late that I was gay, and I had a fear of telling anybody, my family, my closest friends, everybody, because I had that fear of rejection. I was afraid that they wouldn't approve and that they were not going to love me anymore. And so honestly, I struggled a lot throughout, my life personally and professionally, where I was closeted for many, many years. I mean, I was with my partner at the time for 8 years before I, came out to my parents and, to some of my closest friends. The irony is that people I really didn't care about or it didn't matter. I came out to them, whether it was, because I moved far, far away. I came out to them and it was no problem, but it was because I really didn't have that relationship, or I didn't have a fear of losing that relationship.
Right. So you worried more about the rejection from the people that mattered the most.
Exactly.
And wanted their approval.
And ultimately, when I finally did come out to my family and friends, it was a non-issue. Yeah. It was really all me.
Pretty anticlimactic.
Exactly.
Right?
It was they were like, okay. And I got a bunch of hugs and we love you anyway. And we're so proud of you. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I wasted 8 years of my life just with this anxiety and fear for no reason. And so that's what what just seeking that approval and external validation can do to you, can rob you of you being your authentic self.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious, given your role in leadership development and in large organizations at senior levels, what have you found in terms of how this is played out in the workplace and the negative impact of this?
It plays out quite a bit in career because either people miss out on opportunities because they are taking on too much. Like someone will come to them with all kinds of projects and they just keep saying yes, yes, and yes. And it can really cause burnout because they're saying yes, even though when they don't have the bandwidth, it sets them up for failure. So they miss out on opportunities sometimes of promotion and all these things because they're not really focused on what they really want and what they really need to do. And so really teaching people to say no and really start thinking about, is this aligned with my North Star, what I want to do, is really critical because it does play out in the workplace. And sometimes people, not getting tapped on the shoulder for opportunities that they want because they've said yes to too many other things and stretching themselves too thin.
Or not really standing up for anything.
Exactly.
So you're not coming across as a person with conviction who believes in something. So you're just going along with, everybody else or just following the crowd, if you will, which doesn't really help you in terms of being known as someone who has a unique perspective and is bold enough to stand up for that.
Now, what how have you struggled with it? Have you struggled with the whole kind of acceptance kind of addiction, or?
So I've had a totally opposite experience in that I think from an early age, I learned to value being a contrarian and being independent. And I think it has more to do probably with family conditioning and environment. But I learned to gain certainty in my own beliefs and worry less about fitting in. And I think that created a level of confidence and comfort in just being different. I didn't feel that much need to belong and to sort of follow my own path. And I think those very things have helped me not only in my career, but as an entrepreneur. That's absolutely something you have to do, because if you have a dream for something you want to pursue, you can't let it be defined based on what other people think, whether they think that it's going to work or not work, whether they believe it's a good idea or not, or even when things aren't going right, where you let their opinion define the decisions you make, right?
Right.
You have to come from a place of absolute certainty and conviction in your own beliefs, which means people pleasing just doesn't work in that, right? You also you have to learn to say no to a lot of things. You have to learn to be okay with other people's opinions. But part of how I see it is leadership is about decision making, right? And I think it was Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister, that said, "When you decide, you divide." And I thought that was just such a powerful statement, that when you decide, you divide, which means as a leader, if you're deciding, you have to expect that there will be people that will disagree with that. Right. And if that's the case, you're always going to have a set of people that dislike you or reject your opinion or reject your decisions, or even you personally, right? And if you're affected by that, and you let that drive how you show up in the world and how you lead yourself, then you're not really leading. Right. You know? So for me, that has really been a big part of how it's played out, is that not only recognizing that not worrying so much about that has really given me the freedom to pursue my own dreams, but also seeing the negative impact in the workplace when I've seen people that struggle with this, how it really limits their potential. Because they have the potential, but they're so focused on other people's opinions that they just lose that opportunity to be fully and authentically themselves.
Well, you know, it makes sense, because if, two things. When you talked about when you decide, you divide, I could see how approval addiction could make you a very indecisive person, because you're afraid to make those decisions,
or you flip-flop, right? Like you might decide one thing and now everybody else is going a different direction and you don't want to stand out. So you go the other direction.
Yes. They call that sometimes the halo effect, when you see what everybody else is doing and then you just decide to jump on the bandwagon, right? So I could see how that impacts. But then you mentioned a little bit when we're talking about, just it not allowing diversity of thought. Yeah. Because if you are seeking other people's approval and your point of view or your perspective is different, you may not share it because you're afraid that people are going to, disagree with you or reject you or reject that. And so you don't do it. So it limits a lot. Like, you can see how this can be a snowballing kind of compounding effect.
Well, it's even more important now that, in the age of innovation and influence, you can't do either of those if you are constantly worrying about fitting in and pleasing people. You just can't. You can't innovate if you're not willing to break out of the status quo and be different and perhaps be derided or rejected. Or, you can't truly be influential if you're afraid to put your own point of view out there, worrying about what might people say. Right. You can be a thought leader if you don't have the courage to express a thought. Right. And when you do express something, you fully have to expect that there will be people that will agree and there will be people that disagree. That's the whole point, is to facilitate debate and discussion that leads to something better over time. But you have to be willing to be that change agent. Right. And be that leader, and to be able to innovate and influence. And unlike the past, I think the age that we're living in, what we're going into in the future, I think this ability to lead with conviction and to come from a place of true belief and driven by your own values and your own sense of purpose is so critical to make a real difference.
Right.
Being a follower and fitting in is really probably never worked, but certainly will not work in this age.
What if you could pinpoint the invisible ceilings limiting your success? Imagine having clarity on your strengths and barriers so you can take action and gain unstoppable momentum to advance as a future-ready leader. Well, that's exactly what the Beyond Barriers quiz will help you discover. You'll get your personalized score based on the 25 essential elements proven to accelerate success in the digital age, so you can understand what's holding you back and where to focus your efforts. The Beyond Barriers quiz is completely free and takes just a few minutes. Go to iambeyondbarriers.com/quiz and take the quiz today.
So I know people are probably wondering, okay, I may be a people pleaser. I may seek other people's approval, or I'm always seeking external validation. How does someone break that habit? How does somebody, just disrupt that?
So, well, there's lots of different ways to work through this. And there's tons of stuff that you can Google and find out. But I'll share the 3 things that frankly, I've found that have worked for me. And I've found consistently that they are very simple principles that you can apply. Number 1 is, we all have a natural desire to belong.
Yes.
Absolutely. So we're trying to fit in and belong, and we don't want to be rejected from that tribe.
Right.
So that need for belonging doesn't go away because it brings certainty to us. If you want to get this right, you have to find certainty in yourself as opposed to certainty in something external, where and have a strong foundation of belonging that is, absolutely unshakable. So for me, having certainty in self, having a strong inner circle that is absolutely unshakable has been pivotal in that, because then it doesn't matter what's happening externally, whether people approve, disapprove, or like, dislike, you have that foundation and that's there to guide you through that. So certainty in yourself and your core foundation is absolutely key. And if you don't have that clearly defined, figure it out. Even if it means certainty just in yourself, your own ability to weather the storms, all the things you've been able to do, have certainty in that.
Right.
Number 2, I'd say having total clarity of your path, your purpose, your values, things you stand for.
Right.
Because once you know what you stand for and why it matters to you and what that bigger purpose is that's driving you, you'll feel propelled by it, and you'll worry less about whether other people support it.
Right. Exactly.
I think there's something magical that happens when you believe in something bigger than yourself. It just lifts you up to become stronger, better, bolder in many ways.
Right.
So having that clarity is really important. And then finally, number 3, I would say is confidence that comes from simply taking action. So whether that is practicing saying no more, start with saying no one time, do it more often, whether it is practicing, experiencing rejection, maybe putting something out there that you were afraid would not get a positive response, and just doing it and seeing how, it doesn't kill you. So just getting more used to it will help you develop that muscle and ultimately build the confidence. Because the more you practice something and you take action, you will just get better with it. Right. So those are the 3 things that I know have consistently worked for me and are very simple ways to think about it, which is, really get certainty in yourself and your core foundation, gain clarity on your purpose and your values, and then confidence by taking actions.
Well, there you have it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond Barriers podcast. There are thousands of podcasts out there, and we are so grateful that you've chosen to listen to ours. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and tell a friend about it. And subscribe to get new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Visit iambeyondbarriers.com, where you'll find show notes, links, and the best way to connect with our guests. See you next episode.